night, everyone, and welcome to Dialogue with the Diaspora. I am your host, Diane Haylock. Tonight, I am very thrilled to be chatting with an outstanding Belizean artist who uses his artwork as a tool for the expression of social justice. He describes himself as a multidisciplinary artivist who brings awareness to humanitarian, social, and environmental injustices. Cadex Herrera was propelled into fame for his participation in the creation of the larger-than-life portrait of George Floyd that a group of young artists painted in Minneapolis, Minnesota, after Floyd's death. Good evening and welcome to the show, Cadex.
Good evening, Ms. Haylock, and thank you for having me with you today.
Your artwork is outstanding, but before we get into that, I have to start off my show with asking you about your Belizean roots, your connections, your family, where you grew up and when you migrated to the United States. You see, Belizeans, we want to know our people better. You know, one could have said, like, we're just nosy, right? But hey, tell us about you, Cadex.
Right, so of course, I'm Cadex Herrera, and I was born and raised in Belize. I was, most of my childhood was in Benque Viejo, Del Carmen, and I did live in San Ignacio for a short time. Then my family moved back to Benque Viejo. So I call Benque Viejo my hometown, and it is the place that informed me, and sort of made me into the person that I am. My best and my formal and best memories were created in Benque Viejo, Del Carmen, and of course, most of my family, at least on my mother's side, is from Benque Viejo, and I also have family in the northern part of Belize, and Corozal and Calcota, and all over Belize. So I'm incredibly proud of being a Belizean. I like to tell my friends that I'm a Belizeño 100% and Benqueño para siempre, which means I'm a Belizean 100% and a Benqueño forever. So I went to Mount Carmel Primary School. That's where I remember first, grabbing a pencil and paper and learning to draw. I also did my high school at Sacred Heart College in San Ignacio, and wonderful high school. I wasn't the best of students. However, I survived those high school days.
That often happens with artists, doesn't it?
Right.
Because the education system doesn't quite prepare for that side of our brains.
Absolutely. And I have been speaking to some art teachers. Our teacher, Mr. Musa from St. John's in Belize City. And I was, so happy to find out that we are offering art classes now in sort of the high school level.
Indeed, SJC, I understand, has a very good arts program. Yes.
Right. So when I was going to high school, there was no art programs. There was no, learning how to draw. There was no sort of creative outlets for students like myself who weren't terribly good at the academic part of it, or incredibly creative. And there's so many like me right now, young men and women in Belize who are incredibly creative and are struggling academically. And I think that it's important to offer them an outlet as well, where we can focus on the academics, but also give an opportunity to be creative as well as also.
Well, we have quite a ways to go as a country, but I mean, the process has started, but we have quite a ways to go as a country in understanding the importance of the arts and culture generally to our children's development. But I want to go back a bit to more of that story about you, especially, I mean, you said, for instance, that you grew up in Benque. Well, one of the things I like about Benque is that culturally, Benque is a very rich community in this country. In fact, I have seen a lot of arts and cultural work being done in the town of Benqueviejo, which you do not find in many of our communities in this country. So I wanted to ask you then about your involvement then in the arts while you were in school. I mean, the fact that the school itself, you know, was not providing an outlet for that aspect of you. Were you aware of that creative side, and were you then secretively doing your artwork?
To some extent, yes. And before I start, I would like to, you know, make a special mention to two very important people that guided me and sort of set me up in the journey that I took as an artist. And one of them was Mr. My art teacher, Mike Mauricio, who was one of the first art teachers that I got an opportunity to meet and work with. And the second person who created this opportunity was Mr. David Ruiz, the author from Benqueviejo, who, you know, has written many things.
Yes.
And is a proponent and advocate for Belizean history and especially Benqueño history. So Mr. David, he was a science teacher at Sacred Heart College, and he, in the first floor of his family home, he created a little studio, and he, you know, gave out some scholarships to students who wanted to learn art. And I was, you know, just a street kid trying to find my way, but I did know that I enjoyed making art, and that was something that always brought great comfort to me. And I didn't know, but I was making and creating art. And so I got the opportunity to go to this workshop taught by Mr. Mike Mauricio. And they welcomed me, and they saw the potential that I had, the potential that I didn't even know that I had. And so they gave me that opportunity. And of course, you know, I took it. And from that moment, I started realizing that, you know, I could do this as an art form, because typically we're raised, you know, to sort of strive for being what we think is a profession that will pay us, you know, better, you know, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be this, be that. And things like being an artist, being a performer, are rarely sort of encouraged. So when I found that opportunity, and I felt that there were some other folks that appreciated the gift that I had and the skills that I had, and they were teaching me also new skills that I could have, then that gave me that incentive to keep making art. And also, speaking about my hometown, Benqueviejo, yes, we're incredibly proud of being Benqueños. There's so much art and culture and incredibly creative people in my hometown, from many of which, you know, I've learned from. We have musicians and dancers and performers and artists and artisans, and always, you know, trying to show our work and put it out there for anyone, really. And then, so that, you know, growing up in that environment where, you know, I was supported by the community, even though there wasn't necessarily art education in our school system, in the elementary school system, at least when I was there, and in the high school level, there was that push from my community, you know, from my friends, from family saying, hey, you know, you're good, keep doing this. We really like what you're doing.
Yes, that's the Benque I know. So let's take you then from Benque to the United States. What caused you to begin that particular journey?
Well, it was based out of necessity. You know, it was a means to an end. No one, I don't believe, ever wants to leave, you know, what they love and what they know for the unknown. I wasn't necessarily ever thought that I would come to America. But I knew that I wanted to be an artist, and that's what I wanted to study. And I didn't have that opportunity in Belize at all. There's no, higher level educational system that would give me that opportunity to learn art. And I was 19, and my mom had passed away earlier in my teenage life. So I was really trying to find my way and way out of what I saw to be a downward spiral into life, right? And I was trying to get out of that. I was trying to find a way out, and I knew that I wanted to study, and I got an opportunity to travel to the U.S., and that was my main focus. Was if I'm gonna come to a new place, leave everything I love behind, my family, the country I know, the weather, right, and come to this new place that I didn't know anything about or knew anyone. I was going to be incredibly goal oriented. And again, that's one of those things that I learned from very early on, from my own family, my parents. Is always, whatever you do it well and do it with intention. And so I decided that I was going to study art, regardless of what anybody else thought, And so I made that my purpose, and so I
So you packed your bags and you left not knowing what next, or did you have an opportunity to go to study art?
Right, so that was my intention, my goal. But when I left, there was nothing in place for me. I just blindly said, okay, I'm leaving. And I took off, not knowing necessarily if it was going to work out or not. So I made the journey, and it took me about 2 years to sort of start that dream that I had of studying art.
Where did you go first?
Minnesota. I came straight to Minnesota.
You went straight to Minnesota?
Yes.
Why Minnesota? It's a cold, distant place.
Well, I fell in love with a woman who's now my wife.
Aha, okay. That's a good reason.
Yes, and she was from Minnesota, so okay. I came here because that was the only person I knew in Minnesota. So that was also, if not the primary reason why I came to the United States, that was at least one of them. Right? But my dream also was that idea that I wanted to study art because it's something that I felt that was important to me, and it moved me. It really gave me a purpose to create art. And so 2 years after I moved to the United States, after working and trying to earn money, I didn't have any scholarships. I needed to figure out a way to pay for school, and so I did. And 4 years, I graduated with a bachelor's in communication design, and I minored in photography. And then later on, I obtained a master's in education as well. So I'm currently a arts and media arts teacher here for the St. Paul Public School District. And
you were able to get scholarships, or you had to pay for it?
I took out loans, paid for it, had 2, 3, 4 jobs. I worked for the college I was going to. I also had jobs outside of the school. So, I was trying to balance all of these things, and it was a sacrifice, of course, and I had to prioritize between, what I wanted to do and my goals, and I stuck with it. And I think that was, why I'm talking to you right now today is that sort of, I think that most Belizeans have is that perseverance to keep going, and we don't quit once we get started, and we try to make it as best we can,
So let's talk about this inspiration that you must have had for social justice and combining that with art. How did this come about?
Well, ever since we're all grown up, I think that all Belizeans, we sort of are raised and grow up with this sort of idea of justice just because of our political system, right? Either red or blue, and it switches often. And we're always sort of fighting for that idea of, rights and that feeling of, we need to make it better for our people, right? And that's sort of, I had this inherent feel for justice, right? Feel for helping other people, but we don't necessarily know how, especially if we don't have the means. My mother was an incredibly giving woman. And, I remember one time some immigrants came to our home, and we were not well off by any means. And they were from Honduras, and it was a lady with 2 children. And I remember my mom giving me, a little bit of money to go to the store and buy some bread and some cheese, and which is all we had money to buy. And I remember going to the store and buying these supplies and coming back home, and my mom presented this lady who we didn't know who they were, with this, with this food. And I remember the feeling that gave me, that sense of just good. It was almost a spiritual experience of like helping someone without receiving anything in return, right? And it stuck with me. It was one of those, sort of life-changing, altering moments in my life. And not only that, but also just to see the reaction of the lady, and then my mother's sort of heart. We had nothing, and she gave her everything that we had at that moment. And sort of that instills something in me, that whole idea of, you can help people even if you don't have much to do that, right? And so I started thinking as well, what can I do, to help a community as a whole, right? Especially being in America, you're sort of like a singular person, you're alone, what can one person do to help that idea of, helping other folks, and what do I have to offer? And slowly I started developing and coming to the understanding that I had art to offer. And then I started asking my question, well, what kind of art, right? What can I say through my art to help folks out there, either to think or to start a conversation, or to speak truth to power, to speak against the system or something that you
But
found.
what were some of the specific areas in the whole social justice field that sort of captured your attention for you to want to do something about it and express it through your arts? What was happening, especially then in Minnesota, that you began to focus on in your artwork?
Right. So, I look at, the issues around the world as, there's so many things happening. And so one of my things that I hold dear to me is sort of the environment. Growing up in Belize, such a beautiful, lush country where we depend on nature to sort of bring people into our country so that we can have an economy and sort of we have that industry, where we use nature to some extent to bring people in. However, I started seeing a lot of inequalities happening in this country, especially against people of color, immigrants. And I started thinking, well, how can I speak against this? And so I started creating artwork that was focusing on the victim and not the victimizer, right? And so once I started understanding what my role was as an artist, then I started, hearing on the news about different issues that were occurring, and I started creating art as a response to those, but still focusing on the victims. And then we had a change of government in the United States where it was even more apparent of the inequalities that existed between the haves and the have-nots, of people in power and people of color, against and the inequalities of American citizens and immigrants, and what did that mean? And also all of the sort of hateful political rhetoric that was happening surrounding all of those issues. There's also police brutality that had been occurring, but also there was not yet a movement that had sort of coalesced, together. And so I was speaking about some of those issues through my art. And there were several police killings, and I created some portraits of the victims. Always, my work being about the person that was hurt, was centered around them, and not necessarily about the person causing the harm. And so it began to develop and evolve from that. And then I would choose different issues. I still do a theme every month. And so I was in that process, and then also talking about mental health, because I think it's one of those things that we as Belizeans need to really start thinking about, is how do we take care of ourselves, and how do we take care of our families as well that have mental health issues. It's something that we need to address. So I was in this sort of journey when George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, and that compelled me to create a portrait of
I want to come back to that George Floyd thing, but I want to take you a bit back to, the whole issue of earning a living as an artist. We all know, and if you've been involved with the art world in any shape or form, you realize that the artists are usually struggling to survive, and oftentimes having to do different things from their art to be able to actually earn a living. And as I listen to you talk about then telling these stories about the injustices through your artwork, I wondered then, who was your client, your client base, your customers for your artwork? Were you able to sell it, or how did that work? How have you been able to survive as an artist, in this regard?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have a job. So I'm a teacher, and I work for this district, who has been incredibly supportive. And so I was creating all this artwork on the side, and without expectations of any financial returns. As an artist, I was participating in summer art shows, and also putting up my work in galleries, but also creating artwork that was motivated by social issues. So that kind of art is harder to sell, because it's, we're not painting beautiful landscapes and that sort of stuff. I'm talking about political issues. And it's a tougher sort of painting to sell. But what I was trying to promote was ideas and ways to open conversations. And some folks would come and see my work and then commission me to do other work that is not politically based or socially based. And then so I generated income off of that as well. And then also, I participate in painting murals, which, where I live, there's a lot of programs and grants that give artists money to create murals that are socially based and things that are about social issues and social justice.
All right, Cadex and our viewers, we need to take a short break, but we will be right back.
My parents always said, when it's time to build, invest in quality products that last a lifetime, even if it means paying a little more. It is now my turn to invest in my own home, and it's not even a question. It has to be Ovran Windows. My contractor recommends Oran because of the heavy-duty construction, the thickest gauge blades on the market, and the dual locks that allow lower louvers to close independently for privacy while the top remains open for airflow. These features make Oran aluminum louver windows the best on the market.
With Oran aluminum louver windows, you get strength, durability, and beauty with an added layer of security and protection against debris and damaging winds. Come in and check out the variety of sizes and colors at Design Depot, located at Mile 3 Philip Goldson Highway in Belize City.
Congratulations! You finally bought that new vehicle you have been eyeing for months. And it has valid motor insurance. Great deal, right? Or is it? Once the certificate of registration is transferred from the previous owner over to you, then the insurance policy is no longer valid. Why? Because of insurable interest. You have an insurable interest in a vehicle when you stand to lose financially if it is damaged or destroyed. This means that if you will not suffer financially from the loss of or damage to the vehicle, then you cannot insure it. Given that the motor insurance policy is in the name of the previous owner and the certificate of registration will be transferred to you, advise the previous owner to cancel that insurance policy and be sure to purchase your own valid insurance policy to ensure that you are covered. For more information on insurable interest and other insurance matters, our friendly representatives will be happy to assist you. Call us at 223-5734 or visit our website at www.rfginsuranceBelize.com to find an agent near you. Don't forget, it pays to get it right with RF&G Insurance, a Road Group company.
Explore Belize safely with Sanibel by Traveler's Liquors, now available nationwide.
Welcome back to Dialogue with the Diaspora. Diane Haylock here with you again. And tonight I have the pleasure of speaking with Cadex Herrera, a Belizean artist living in Minnesota. Cadex, perhaps you could go back to talking a bit about what you're currently doing. For instance, I know you are sitting in your classroom in your school right now, and that mural behind you is actually a piece of your artwork. So maybe you could tell us about that.
Right. So so this is just a simple sort of black and white mural that I have around my classroom. I usually create art for my students just So, every day I create a motivational quote and I put a drawing behind it. A lot of it has to do with motivating the students and letting them know that art doesn't have to be something difficult. It doesn't have to be something that you need expensive mediums, expensive supplies to create with. Sometimes a simple marker and paper or a surface will suffice to make art and make a statement or say something about something that you are passionate about. And so these behind me are just some simple drawings on just recycled paper that we use here at the school. And so I create these, they're minimalist drawings. It's just the idea of creating a visual language with very simple lines. So it's just images that are calm and comforting of nature.
So you are a teacher, as you said, the thing that pays the bill more regularly, if you will. What classes are you actually teaching? What level? Is this secondary school or what?
Right, so I do teach high school and middle school. And I teach media arts, so anything dealing with technology, so photography, graphic design, graphic illustration, digital illustration, video production, so any art medium that incorporates digital mediums in it.
Maybe you could tell us a bit about your involvement with the George Floyd mural.
Right. So I had been working on, I had been doing some portraits of some men and women that were killed by the police. And during that time, I was also involved with a muralist program right here in St. Paul called CLUES, Comunidades Latinas Unidas en Servicio, which is an organization that provides services for Latinos here in St. Paul. And so I was part of this program and I was creating murals. And so one of my partners in the mural apprenticeship program saw the portrait I had done that I posted on my Instagram account of George Floyd. And her name is Zena Goldman, and she asked me if I would design, if I was interested in participating in the mural of George Floyd. And, being at that moment, it had just happened that week, and being, sort of exposed to that, and being that moment, and being in the rawness of what we were experiencing as a community, I designed the mural that is, that you now see on the wall in Minneapolis. And it just came from, it was a sort of a bolt of inspiration. I had all of this sort of emotions already sort of building. So it wasn't a piece that took much sort of elaboration. It was all the pieces were already in place based on sort of the exposure that I've already had to all the police brutality. So I created and designed the mural, and then we decided on a time, and Zena and I showed up at the location, and it was right, the actual mural is in front of the building where George Floyd was murdered, and there was an old advertisement there where the mural now is, and the advertisement was for milk, and it was this very folksy looking thing. And then another artist who was supplying us with the materials, the ladders and the paints and the brushes, came. Her name is Greta. Amazing muralist here in the Twin Cities. And that was her profession. She's an actual muralist, and she's been working with different communities. And she provided us with the equipment and supplies that we needed. And we just decided, hey, we're gonna put this mural up here. We didn't ask the owners or anybody permission. We just said, this is something that we have to do. And we started painting that piece at about 8 o'clock that morning. And there was already, people and media gathered in that area, and they started asking questions about what we were doing. So we shared with them, what the cause was and what we're trying to do and accomplish. And people are incredibly supportive. A lot of folks were just walking off the street, asking, if they could just be part of that moment, if they could just put a dab of paint on that mural. And so we invited anyone who wanted to just come and add to that mural. And so, we had young children, we had grandmothers, we had people from all walks of life, all different cultures and ethnicities just coming by the mural, but when we were making it, and those folks just standing there watching us complete this work. And it was essential for us to complete it that day as well, just because the whole, and the environment was tense, the situation was very heavy.
Indeed.
A lot of pain, there was a lot of hurt. And so we wanted to create a piece that gave some comfort, a place for folks to reflect, to memorialize George Floyd. And then also the idea behind the mural was also to, show a person, a human being. A lot of media were starting to paint George Floyd as, as a criminal and all of these things about his past. And so my intention was to, let's hold on, because let's look at this as a human being first.
Yes.
This was a person. There was a person who had a family and had children and had people that loved him and people that he loved, right? And who are we to judge, regardless of the situation? So it was a piece that was born out of an action as a response to the terrible thing that we had all witnessed, which was his murder. And it was a call to action. It was a call to say, you know what, this was a human being. This man did not deserve to die. It could be anyone. And also the police and authorities and law enforcement do not have the right to be judge and executioner, right? And kill anybody they want on the streets. And so it was a call to action. It was something that I, as a human being, as a man, as a person, as an immigrant, as a brown person, needed to stand up and say something. And my tools and my weapons are, was art.
Do you have an idea of how many people may have ultimately put their little mark on that mural?
There are so many. I'd say, so we started that mural at 8 o'clock that morning. And so there was the three main artists, me, Greta, and Zena. And then we had other artists who came by who were like just walking down the street. There was this artist that we had no idea who he was, and he said, "Hey, I paint signs for a living." So I gave him the task of writing the names in the background, and he did a wonderful job. And then we had folks who just wanted to be part of that moment and memorialize it, and they would, be in front of the mural and take a photo or add a little dab of paint. So I'd say anywhere from about 100 to 150 people. We were done with that mural about 6 o'clock that afternoon. And there was so many folks coming back and forth. And as the mural started to evolve and sort of appear, more folks came to look at it. More people came to see it. And more people were walking back and forth. And all of a sudden it became a congregation. Folks were watching us, cheering us on, being in the moment. And as soon as we were done with the mural, it was turned into a memorial, a place where people could come and remember George Floyd. And it's not something that we intended to happen, right? We just wanted to stand up and say, what happened to this man was wrong, and it should not happen again. And we want to memorialize, we want to show you that he was a person that had a spirit and a life and a family and a soul, right? He was a human being, regardless of anything and everything. Immediately, it turned out that folks just start putting flowers and memorial and candles and images and gathering around that mural. And it was an incredible, reaction from the community and then the world, to the piece that I never expected to happen.
Cadex, what do you see in your future and your art?
Yeah. So right now I'm still continuing, the work of social justice. And recently I completed a installation in this city. It's a suburb of Minneapolis called Eden Prairie. And it's a series that I started about 3 years ago called First Person Plural, which means we. And we is the first word in the Constitution of the United States. So we, the people. And so I asked myself that question. It's like, what does that mean, we, right? And who does that include? And so I came to the conclusion that we represents everyone that lives in this country. And also start thinking about the history of this country and who were one of the folks that helped create, this country. And we owe a lot of that to immigrants. And so I created the series, this installation in the city. I created 7 pieces where I interviewed people from different parts of the world, from United Arab Emirates, Mexico, Netherlands, Vietnam. And I created this piece to record their story and also to place them in the history of this city called Eden Prairie as being, part of the people that are making the city. Right? A lot of the times in America, when we hear about the history of a specific place, immigrants are not included. People of color are not included. And so I wanted to change that narrative. I wanted to make a record that these folks, and these are not by any means famous people, they're just regular people, like myself, immigrants. And so I wanted to honor them and honor their stories. And so I interviewed them, and you could go to the City of Eden Prairie's website and see their stories, them telling me about their journey to this country. And then I also created an installation of 8 by 8 feet murals of their likeness, created using pointillism, which is just black dots, to create their portraits. And each black dot represents that idea of mobilization, of numbers, right? Because that's basically what we are, and that whole idea of transitioning. And their faces are done really in high contrast tones. And that, if you look at a specific part, it sort of starts looking like maps, sort of these maps, that represents all the different places that we come from. So that is my current work right now. It was received very well. And that's one of the things I want to continue doing. And I'm currently, submitting for grants, asking for different organizations to support me in this effort to create more work that honors, the stories and lives of everyday immigrants that come to this country to make it a better place, and for them also, to fulfill their dreams and their hopes.
So we are here in Belize, and as your fellow Belizeans, we would love to be able to experience your art firsthand. So might there be somewhere in the not too distant future the possibility of a Cadex Herrera mural in Belize, or even an art show, Jen, an art show?
Absolutely. So I have been collaborating with Mr. Musa at St. John's College, and then also at NCIH in Banco Viejo del Carmen with Nayeli. They're doing some amazing things in Banco Viejo. And I think the cultural department in Belize also is doing some great things to promote Belize as a place where you can learn about our history and our culture, and also promoting the roots and culture of all of the different wonderful, wonderful ethnic groups that exist in Belize, right? Because we are, after all, a wonderful, not necessarily mixed, but just a wonderful place where we can experience the culture of different, of folks from all different parts of the world. And so we have been in conversations. As a matter of fact, last year I was scheduled to do a mural in commemorating the 40 years of Belize's independence, but because of COVID, that had to be scratched. I didn't want to be in a position where I had groups of people coming together and then folks getting sick. And so yes, ultimately that is one of my goals, and a dream is to come back come back as a practicing artist to Belize and have the opportunity to either teach or create artwork that speaks to our culture, our history, our goals, our dreams, etc.
So clearly you have not lost your connection with Belize. I know that you have 3 children. How important is it for those children to make their connection with their Belizean roots?
Incredibly important. We just came back from a trip to Belize in December, and this is the 3rd time I brought my kids to Belize over the years, and it's so amazing now that they're older. They can experience our country, our food, family, and what that really means, and then just meeting and doing things, and then showing them, parts of my life that they might have never known about. And I do believe that my children are incredibly connected to being Belizeans and to my culture. Of course, we celebrate the 21st of September at home. I was listening to Belizean music, and we're always connecting with family back home. So it doesn't escape. They can't escape that, part of who they are, is that they're also American Belizeans. And as a matter of fact, when my youngest son experienced, we went scuba snorkeling in San Pedro with the sharks, and he loved it so much he wants to go back to Belize and learn to scuba dive so he can be a scuba instructor and swim with the sharks and stuff. So it's amazing that I'm fortunate enough also that I can give them these experiences, and a lot of that I can thank to being an artist.
Given your life experiences, do you have some ideas, some advice that you would like to offer Belizean creatives who are trying very hard to realize their dream as artists?
Being an artist is tough. Making art is tough. However, we cannot, give up on our dreams. You cannot give up on your goals as an artist. You got to keep making it. But most importantly, if you don't have the support of people or the community, you still have to keep going. And it's not necessarily advice for the artist, but I would like to implore and ask our Belizean community as a whole to advocate and support Belizean artists, because without us supporting our own artists, then it's incredibly hard and incredibly difficult for an artist to succeed. And I'm talking, the whole spectrum of what it is or what it means to be an artist, a Belizean artist, a creative, singers, poets, dancers, sculptors, painters. We need to support our artists locally, nationally, and globally as well. And always, give them that extra push. Let them know that, what they're doing is important. Even if that artist is just beginning, we need to support it. And even if that artist is at the other spectrum of what it means to be an artist, we still need to keep supporting them. And we have to understand that if we want to, as a society, to advance in the arts and in culture, we also have to, support our own artist endeavors.
Yes, absolutely. If people want to check out or even buy your artwork, where are they available?
Yes, so my serious work is on my website, which is www.cadexherrera.com. And then you can always check out my work, follow me on Instagram, and it's the same, it's Cadex Herrera. Usually that's where I post all my artwork, and also on Facebook as well, Cadex Herrera. So you could just type my name and, follow me. I'll be glad to follow you back, especially, if you're a Belizean artist and creative. I definitely want to follow you and see your work and see your progress and, be one of those folks that pushes you along. And yeah, contact me.
Well, Cadex, I have to say it, you're a truly talented Belizean artist, and
Thank you so much
it
for
was
saying
simply delightful chatting with you this evening. Keep on creating beautiful pieces and making us proud.
Thank you
Thanks
so
again
much.
for joining us
Thanks
tonight.
for having me. Much appreciated.
Viewers, we now take a short pause for a final ad break.
Need a paint which offers superior quality and durability? Then the choice is easy. Designed specifically for your home's exterior, Benjamin Moore Ultra Spec EXT offers ultra smooth performance. It's easy to apply, has low odor, and is mildew resistant. Bring life to your home by choosing the color and sheen to suit your style. Benjamin Moore Paints, available at Benny's. Quality and savings.
You're up against some tough challenges, but not all heavy-duty lubricants can handle the pressure. Until now, introducing Ridgeline Lubricants, a homegrown solution engineered right here to solve the hurdles you face every day. Backed by experts who understand the ups and downs of where you're operating and what's at stake. Specially formulated to protect your equipment so you can push past grueling hours, heavy loads, and harsh conditions to reach for greater productivity. Ridgeline Lubricants. Long live your equipment.
Thank you for staying tuned into Dialogue with the Diaspora. I continue to be impressed and inspired by our Belizean creatives both at home and abroad, and the strides that they have made in their respective field. Our guest tonight, Cadex Herrera, is another example of a Belizean artist pursuing his passion in the arts. Through arts, people are able to tell stories, inspire others, and deliver powerful calls to action, as Cadex has demonstrated. The art industry in Belize has seen an acceleration in development recently, especially because of social media, which allows our people the platform to express themselves, tell their stories, and showcase their talent. We hope that Belize's art industry continues to develop and that our youth are encouraged to be creative, expressive, and brave to pursue their passions. With that, our time is up for tonight, but we will be back again next Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on CBTV and on Colorblind's Facebook page. Good night and take good care.